Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes. Not showing a quorum of board members quite yet, but everyone did RSVP yes. So we'll just give it a minute or two more to let everyone have a chance to join. All right, thanks for your patience. It does look like we have a quorum for today's meeting. However, I am not seeing Chair Fromer on the line quite yet. Director April, are you willing to take us through the agenda?
Sorry, yes, I'm a little caught off on my flat foot there.
Yeah, I know
Honestly,
you
I didn't even see
responded
this in
yes
my
to the
calendar.
invitation.
So I'm a little behind the eight ball here. Apologize for that. That being said, we should probably do the welcome roll call and public comment. Kay, do you have an orderly way to do roll call? I'll defer to you.
Yeah, so I'm looking at who is logged on online. And we have Director Trowbridge, Director Block, Director Garcia, Director Jones, Director Averill, Sabina, Blinn, and Coffin. And Director Fromer just joined us. So we have
Great.
everybody.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna let it go back to him then, if that's all right.
That's great.
Okay.
So Chair Fromer, we were just going through the agenda, and I will note that we did not receive any public comments for this meeting. Desiree, can you confirm?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit late today. Did you all finish the roll call?
We did. We have everyone in attendance.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the action agenda and approving the minutes from the October 10th, 2023 CTE board meeting.
I move to approve. Action agenda, approval of minutes from 10/10/2023.
I'll second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, minutes have been approved. And
And
then
we do
separately,
ad hoc meeting minutes as well from November 6th.
Yeah, I didn't attend that meeting, so I didn't include that in my motion. I'm sorry for the confusion.
all right, well, I will make a motion to approve the November 6th, 2023 ad hoc board meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Meeting minutes approved. Next on the agenda, we have a program administrator update from Kay Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Fromer. I've got a lot on the agenda today, so I've got the first 3 agenda items, but we'll start with the program administrator update. Desiree, you can go to the next slide. So just a few things to update you on of importance. First, I wanted to give you an update on the Clean Transit Enterprise funding opportunities. So the planning awards that the board selected in the fall are in the award-making process. So specifically where we are at, the 2 awards in DRCOG's area, the Laridan Hall and VIA, are in the process of being added to the DRCOG TIP. Once that step completes, all 4 of the awards will be sent through our internal budgeting process and then sent to contracts for award. So all awards that CDOT makes are a several month effort. We expect these to be fully awarded this fiscal year, and they are moving along in the process. In terms of the capital funding, so this is for vehicles, infrastructure, and facilities. That notice of funding opportunity is expected to go out in March, March 4th specifically, so that's less than 2 weeks away. This is going to be the first opportunity for agencies to apply for, again, the vehicle, facilities, and infrastructure awards and funding that CTE has available. With the funding authority that we received, which our enterprise financial staff will tell you about later, we expect to have about $15 million available across those 3 categories. And so that will go out, we expect on March 4th, and there'll be 60 days for agencies to apply. And then we'll be coming to you in the spring with our recommendations for awards there. Also of interest in this call for projects, so this is the consolidated call for capital projects that the Division of Transit and Rail puts out annually. So there's lots of different funding sources in there. Of note to this group is the Volkswagen settlement funds. Those are funds available for transit agencies for zero emission buses. These are kind of time limited funds that came to be because of a Volkswagen emissions settlement. So we set aside some of those funds for transit agencies. With the advent of the CTE, this will be kind of an ongoing revenue stream. Before, the only game in town was really the Volkswagen settlement funds and then what you could get through federal awards. So this will be the final opportunity for agencies to apply for the Volkswagen settlement funds. We have about $16.8 million available for zero emission transit buses there. Anything that goes unclaimed by transit agencies this year in the call will be sent back to the Department of Public Health and Environment, where other fleets will have the opportunity to apply for it. We just don't want the funding to go to waste. If we don't use it, we lose it. So if transit agencies aren't interested in that particular funding, we'll send it back to the Department of Public Health and they'll put it out for other fleets so that none of it goes to waste. So that's the update on the capital call for projects and where we are with all of our grant funds. The second thing on my list is just an FYI for the board and anyone who may be interested in ZEV transit buses generally who's listening. So FTA Region 8 is going to be hosting a zero emission bus listening session next week on the 28th at 1 p.m. FTA has heard some concerns over the last couple of years with electric bus fleets and some of the issues they've been having with manufacturers of those buses. So FTA just kind of wants to hear from agencies to better understand what's going on, how they can help, the guidance that they have available. So if there are any transit agencies who are interested in participating in that conversation and haven't heard about it, please reach out and we can forward you the information. And then not on the slide, but very late breaking news. This just popped into my inbox just a few minutes ago. But today, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory announced that they have $5 million for Clean Bus Planning Awards. So this is a program that's going to be funded by the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation and managed by NREL. And this is a program that's going to provide free technical assistance to create comprehensive and customized bus electrification plans for fleets across the US. So CTE obviously has that money as well. But just another resource that's out there. I was texting with our planning team. Thanks, Mike, for putting that into the chat. Again, this email came across our desks in the last hour, so haven't had much time to digest it. But we'll plan to reach out to that NREL team and see if those folks might be interested in coming to a future CTE meeting to tell us more about what they're doing. And obviously, fleets are still welcome to apply to us for that funding, but if they can get it for free from NREL, that frees up some of our funds to fund other capital projects as well. So a lot to digest there. Again, late breaking, but wanted to share that information since it just came out. Any questions on anything so far? All right, so the next slide is, I wanted to provide an opportunity to recap the board member feedback interviews. So I asked our amazing Division of Transit and Rail fellow, Zia O'Neill, to hold some individual conversations with all of our CTE board members, just as a way to better understand how things are going, where we might have some opportunities for improvement. So Zia conducted all those interviews with all the board members over the past several weeks. She did that on my behalf, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to summarize what she heard and if there's any discussion from the board afterwards. So Zia, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Kay. And thank you to all of the directors of CTE for taking the time to chat with me about your experience with the board and progress. And I just wanted to share out some of the key findings and takeaways. The first is that the members of the board pretty much unanimously have confidence in their current leadership and express a large amount of gratitude to CDOT staff members for ensuring that all of these meetings have been running smoothly, efficiently, and that the content being covered is applicable and useful progress. Next, there was also a unanimous request for an in-person meeting at the very least once per year, just to increase the amount of engagement and connection that the different board members feel with each other and being able to trust and increase that collaboration that can be accomplished as a part of CTE. And then next, everyone was very happy with the progress of the enterprise, and there was no major concerns with the content covered in the meetings and the ability to draw on the expertise of the various board members. So there were a couple of opportunities for improvement, and I just wanted to highlight a few of them. One was a recommendation for using some extra space at the end of the time together to share any learnings. So a lot of members are part of various meetings throughout the state and being able to report back on some of those updates, as well as other applicable things in the news, as well as having shorter meeting notes. So that way, if you miss a meeting, you're still able to be fully up to date and do that in a shorter period of time. The next opportunity for improvement was pulling back in some of those initial conversations with smaller transit agencies to talk about their successes and their barriers to the adoption of electric buses. And then finally, making sure that we are sharing the benefits of the electrification of buses with a wider audience and combating some misinformation and utilizing this space to promote the adoption of electric vehicles. Any questions about the key findings of these meetings? Great, thank you very much. I'll pass it back to you, Kay.
Thank you again, Zia, for taking the time to do the interviews. So we will be kind of reviewing the notes. Zia was great. She didn't attribute any particular comment to any particular board member, so it's all very anonymous for us, but some great pieces of feedback. And we'll start to implement some of these items and suggestions. In particular, the in-person meeting with the Transportation Commission was something we discussed last year. There were some delays in getting our new commission onboarded at the end of the summer, when we had kind of slated to do that meeting. So I think we'll have a good opportunity to do that this year instead. So appreciate everyone's feedback and appreciate Zia's great job on this project. And that takes me to our next agenda item, which is our CTE board elections. So the vote of confidence feedback on our current chair and vice chair is very timely because the next item on the agenda is electing our new representatives for the board. I pulled a few relevant sections of our bylaws to remind us of the requirements that we have for the board officers and appointees. So just for everyone's refreshment, we have 2 elected and 1 appointed position on the board. So the bylaws do require us to elect a chair and a vice chair every 2 years. We also have a secretary, and the secretary of the board has a term that's at the will of the enterprise board, so we don't need to take any particular action on the secretary. Desiree Scott, our current secretary, will continue to serve in that capacity without the need for anything official in that capacity. But the chair and the vice chair do need to be re-elected or elected at the January meeting of the enterprise board or the next scheduled meeting thereafter every 2 years. So that would be today's meeting. On the next slide, I list the duties of the chair and the vice chair. So basically the chair presides at meetings, is our enterprise spokesperson, helps us to coordinate meetings and agendas. The vice chair presides in the absence of the chair, and the board can also assign them additional roles if they desire to do that. That hasn't been taken advantage of to date, but that's a power that we have in our bylaws. And we can also appoint other offices that we deem necessary and appropriate. Again, we haven't exercised that to date, but if we wanted to form a subcommittee or do something like that, that's an option available in the bylaws as well. So I will pause there and allow the board to discuss whom they may want to nominate for these roles for the upcoming 2-year terms. We have not had any volunteers for the chair and vice chair role. We have had a vote of confidence in our current chair and vice chair. But I will open this up to discussion of the board and nomination of board members to fill the roles.
I would move to keep the current chair and board chair, vice chair, if they're interested in serving. They've done a great job and appreciate their work.
I would second that.
So if Director Averill and Director Frommer accept the nomination, we can probably move to a vote. Or if there's any discussion.
I'm happy remaining vice chair if that's what the rest of the board decides.
Yeah, I want to hear a campaign speech.
Come on, you know me better than that.
Get
No,
out
it's
the yard
been fun.
signs.
Yeah, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm happy to continue as vice chair.
Likewise here, it's been a pleasure to serve as the chair of the board. I would be fine passing the torch. I would also be fine continuing on. It's just been a pleasure to be with this group. So yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, so Desiree, we can go to the motion slide. I think Director Garcia already made a motion to this effect. So if there are, so we had a motion by Director Garcia and a second by Director Block, all in favor of reappointing Director Frommer as chair and Director Averill as vice chair. If you could respond aye or show of hands.
Aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, well, congratulations to Chair Fromer and Vice Chair Aberville. Thank you for your service over the past 2 years. Looking forward to continuing to work with you
Thanks.
for the next 2 years. Appreciate it. All right, so we are just clicking through a lot of administrative things in the early part of this meeting. So next up on our list is our Clean Transit retail delivery fees for fiscal year 25. So you can go to the next slide, Desiree. So CTE has the statutory authority to perform annual adjustments to the Clean Transit retail delivery fee based on inflation. The board does have to approve these fees and communicate them to the Department of Revenue by March 15th of each year, so that the Department of Revenue can do the things that they need to do in order to be prepared to start collecting the fee once the new fiscal year starts on July 1st. So the initial fee was originally set at 3 cents. And if the board members remember, we raised it last year to 3 11/100 cents. And we're being asked to do another inflationary adjustment this year. So on the next slide, this is just a reminder that the overall retail delivery fee is shared among 6 different groups. We use it to carry out our business purpose as the Clean Transit Enterprise to assist transit agencies with zero emission transitions. The other SB 260 enterprises use it for their specific business purposes. A portion goes to the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, and another portion also goes to a general purpose pot at CDOT that funds a variety of projects. The total fee does have to add up to a clean rounded cent, clean rounded penny. But this is the breakdown of how those fees get distributed across those 6 different recipients. And on the next slide, so this is this is the way that the Department of Revenue calculates this. Basically, they look at the consumer price index, the inflation rate, and they calculate the percent that the fee should be raised and how that raise is distributed among the 6 different recipients. So right now, as you can see, we started at 27 cents, we started at 3 cents, and then we went to 3 11/100 cents, and we are being asked to move to 3 22/100 cents for the fiscal year that starts on July 1st, 2024. So it's the pleasure of the board to raise the fee. There's a proposed motion with helpful tips on how to verbalize those decimal points, because we're out quite a few decimal points on this. So if the board does approve the fee increase, the CTE staff will send the required memo to the Department of Revenue in advance of that deadline. We'll update our financial forecasts with the new fee, and then DOR will start collecting that fee starting on July 1st. So I'll pause there if there are any questions or discussion for the board before we proceed.
Okay, just a quick question. It looks like the other enterprise funds are increasing their rates too, according to that previous table, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I believe it is the intention of all the other enterprise boards to raise the fee in accordance with the suggested inflationary adjustments from the Department of Revenue. We haven't been notified by any of the other entities that they wouldn't be moving in this direction.
Okay, who does the adjusting to make this thing round off to a penny in the end?
The Department of Revenue.
Okay, and then they just prorate whatever adjustment they had to do back to us and based on the
Correct.
various raises that the various boards have done.
Yep.
Okay,
So if you roll back to slide 14, Desiree, with the kind of the other chart. One more. That one, yep. So on that one, you can see the overall fee started at 27 cents, moved to 28, moved to 29. And they give us a very comprehensive spreadsheet that shows the inflationary adjustments for each of the enterprises based on the CPI and the inflation rate. And they advise us to set the fee at this specific level. Again, for us, it's 3 and 22/100 cents. And then they all add up to the 29 cents for fiscal year 25.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or discussion.
All right, so Desiree, you can probably
Yeah.
go back to slide 16 with the motion on it.
So I will move for the Clean Transit Enterprise to adopt a new retail delivery fee level of 3 and 22/100 cents for fiscal year 2025, based on the recommendation from the Department of Revenue and Enterprise staff.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion approved.
Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, we will send the memo to Department of Revenue. We'll probably do that this week. It's not due until March 15th, but we'll get that done as soon as possible. And then the next up is going to be our enterprise financial staff. So do note that the most recent revenue forecast that they're working from is not this, it's the prior version. So what you see here will change the next time we have a financial forecast from them. But those new forecasts will be developed in time for our next meeting. And again, they'll start collecting the new fee on July 1st. So I think Kay and Cassie are going to take over from here.
Yes. Hello, this is Kay Haruska, the Enterprise Controller. And on the next slide is, I believe, your year-to-date figures for the enterprise through December. When we had to get this put together, we did not have January numbers finalized yet. We're still waiting for January to close. So as you can see, for through the month of December, we have collected approximately 4.9 million, and the retail delivery fee and interest earnings of 154,000. While majority of the expenses are related to staffing and also attorney general fees. Any questions?
All right.
I've got a question on the 2 grants that we've awarded. Those are not showing up as expenses anywhere?
Correct, because that money has not been distributed yet out to the people who, or the entity that has been awarded it. So when those get awarded and the cash physically leaves the door, then that'll be reflected on here.
Okay, thank you.
And then I will turn it over to Cassie.
Hello, can you please go to the next slide for me? Thank you. So this is the updated, the most recent revenue forecast for the retail delivery, specifically for the Clean Transit Enterprise retail delivery fee. As Kay mentioned, this does not include the new proposed rate for fiscal year 25. That will be worked into our next quarterly forecast that gets published in March. So this still reflects the second quarter forecast, which is the budget, the forecast that we're using to tie the budget to. So as you can see, we're pretty well on mark with our forecast and actuals. It's trending pretty closely. And we'll keep you updated. And the next time we come, we will have an updated forecast that includes that new fee. I can go to the next slide for me. Thank you. So when this board met last time, we talked about including the cash balance going forward. So that is what this slide is showing you. We've got a current cash balance through February 2024 of 14.8 million. The actual fiscal year 23 year-ending cash balance was about 8.6 million. And then for fiscal year 24, we are forecasting just under 9 million in revenue. So at the end of the fiscal year, we are forecasting a cash balance of about 17.6 million total. So that would be money that's just in the fund available for future spending. Can I go to the next slide, please? So just as a reminder, this is the budget that the board previously adopted for fiscal year 25. This was adopted in November of 2023, but as a reminder, this was based on the revenue that we were forecasting for fiscal year 25. And then after that, we did submit a budget amendment with the governor's January 2nd budget amendment request to the legislature to increase that spending authority based on what we were forecasting for the actual fund balance. So if you can go to the next slide for me. So just to give an update on where we're at with that process, the spending authority for the Colorado or for the Clean Transit Enterprise is granted by the legislature. We had previously done that based on forecasted revenue. So for fiscal year 25, that original request for spending authority for fiscal year 25 was about $9.9 million. And then on January 2nd, a budget amendment was submitted to increase that spending authority by 8.2 million for a total of 18.1 million for fiscal year 25. The Joint Budget Committee did meet on February 8th, and they conducted their figure setting process. So that's where they go through and vote on all the different pieces that were requested for the budget. So they did figure setting for CDOT and the enterprises, and they did formally adopt that budget amendment request to increase the spending authority for CT. So that was approved. The next step is for the long bill to get introduced by the Joint Budget Committee. And then of course that has to go through the full legislature, so both houses, and get adopted and then eventually signed by the governor. And then that will be the official budget. We'll know for sure that that is the final budget for fiscal year 25. So the next time this board meets, we should have the final number for fiscal year 25. We don't anticipate any changes, but just so you know, it won't be final until the governor actually signs it. But at this point, the next step then would be for this board to go ahead and adopt the final fiscal year 25 budget that reflects that increased spending authority. So we can go to the next slide. And so just a quick visual on what that looks like as a reminder. So the November 1 request, 9.9 million, we increased the spending authority request through a budget amendment by 8.2 million for a total of 18.1. So this is the current spending authority for the Clean Transit Enterprise for fiscal year 25. And then next slide. And so this is an updated budget proposal that reflects that 18.1 million. So you can see it's got the total spending authority, 18.1 million at the top, and then that would be allocated across administration and agency operations. And then that full increase was reflected in the programmed funds line. So we have the total allocated then of 18.1 million to match the spending authority request. And then the next slide. And then the next item would be adoption. But before you get to that, are there any questions about the revenue forecast, the cash balance, the budget amendment, spending authority, anything that you have questions on?
I would just say nice work. Thank you for incorporating those fund balances into our financials. It's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Kay. I have one clarifying question. So Proposition 117 from a few years back limits the total amount of funding at $20 million a year for the first 5 years for those enterprises. And I'm wondering whether that applies to just total revenue collected or our spending authority. As in, if we were going to increase it, say again next year, would we be able to exceed 20 million if needed, or is there a cap there? Or is it just applied to revenue?
So it applies to the revenue. And what we request for spending authority wouldn't matter with that. We can, we'll collect whatever revenue was going to be collected based on the fee level. And then that money goes into the fund. And then whatever spending authority is granted from that fund is kind of independent on, as far as the total revenue with regard to that proposition. So I think, and Kay, maybe you have some more to speak to that, but I'm sure we'll be tracking closely the total revenue and making sure that it stays within that limit. But yeah, the spending authority will have no impact on that. Correct. Yep.
Okay, thanks for that.
All right, and then I can turn it back to, I guess, is the next step to have a board action. So this would be a motion to adopt the fiscal year 25 budget to reflect that updated spending authority.
I would move for the Clean Transit Enterprise to adopt the fiscal year 2025 final budget as presented by enterprise staff.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion approved.
Thank you. So I'm done now. I'm gonna hand things over to Mike King, who's gonna talk to you about the public accountability dashboard. But thank you for helping us check several administrative things off our list for today. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Kay. And good afternoon, board members. As Kay said, I'm going to talk about our CTE Public Accountability Dashboard. Next slide, please. So you may recall from the original text of Senate Bill 21-260 that created the board and the Clean Transit Enterprise that we are also required to create, maintain, and regularly update a website with a public accountability dashboard. I'm not going to read every word of this to you, but essentially we need to be able to show the public what we are doing with funding, how we are implementing the 10-year plan, and make sure that that is posted in a way that people can access it when they like. Up until now, this has not been a big focus of ours because we didn't have any awards actually being made, but now that we've awarded our first batch of planning funds and are moving towards capital projects in the near future, we wanted to return to this topic and share a draft of what this dashboard would look like for the board's feedback. We've been working with some CDOT colleagues who manage a variety of public-facing dashboards for the department. We talked with them about the requirements here, and they've created a mock-up for us that we can look at together. And with the board's feedback and support, we can move towards posting a version of this publicly in the near future. And then, of course, we'll have the opportunity to update it regularly after the fact. Next slide, please. So this is a visual of what the mock dashboard will look like. And I'm actually going to try to switch to sharing my screen to show you all an interactive version of it. So just be patient for a second here, and you should be seeing it shortly. Desiree, it says that participant screen sharing is disabled. I don't know if you can give me permission to do that.
Let me look at it. Give me a second.
Thanks. And while we're working on that, I'll just point out a couple of the features that I'll try to demonstrate live here in a second. So obviously you can see that we have a table with projects listed in the lower left-hand corner. It includes the category of funding, the project name, the awarded agency. In this case, a lot of these are dummies. We wanted to include data just so that we could demonstrate it for the group, but only the first 4 are real projects at this point. Okay, looks like I have the ability to screen share, so let me pull this up. Okay. So you should now be seeing the live version on my screen. Please let me know if you don't. And so here you should be able to see my cursor. this is the list of projects, and you can see we have the fiscal year, the category, the name of the project, the awarded agency, dollar amounts, award status, and whether or not it is in an enhanced incentive area, which is one of the ways that we measure the equity component of a project. In the lower right, you can see that we have a map showing the locations of these projects, and then the size of the circle is indicative of the project dollar amount, and you're able to hover over them. Again, these are hypothetical projects at this point. They're basically made up, but just to demonstrate how it would look once we have some in here. You can obviously zoom in and out. You can click on the projects and get more information if you hover over them. And one of the nice features of this is that it's basically live. So anything that you click on, it adjusts the other metrics to reflect it. So because I clicked on one of these projects, it filtered everything out to show just the ones in that location. And you can see that it adjusted the line graphs, which now I need to refresh to get us back to the start, I believe. Maybe I'm doing that wrong. Here we go. Let's try it this way. All right, so here we are back at the start. Let me zoom in a little bit so that this is easier to see. So we have award amounts by fiscal year. In fiscal year 23, we have $1 million, and then over time this grows. Again, hypothetical projects here. The projects by category, we have our 4 funding categories of charging and fueling, facilities, planning, and vehicles. You have the count of the number of awards, as well as the dollar amount. And it also shows you that, for instance, while 20% of the awarded projects are for charging and fueling, that only represents 2% of the awarded amount. In contrast, 25%, or I guess in this case, 40% of the projects awarded are vehicles, but they represent 52% of all funding. And then we have categories for the status of the project. Has it been awarded? Is it in progress? Is it completed? Has it been withdrawn? And again, as we click on different ones, it filters out the rest to reflect in each category. The map updates, for instance. So I think that highlights most of the major features here. Hopefully you can see kind of the idea behind this is that it provides information sliced and diced in different ways for members of the public based on their interest, and it's meant to be interactive. There are other features that we could consider adding on here. Eventually, as projects are completed, we could consider adding photos of the projects, perhaps case studies or other information in the future. But at its most basic, the idea is that the dashboard gives the user a high-level understanding of how the funding is being allocated, where it's going in the state, and what are the status of the projects being awarded through the funding, so that they can have confidence that we're using taxpayer money well, but also that if they want to learn more information about specific projects, that they have a starting point to see the big picture and then zoom in on whatever is most interesting to them. So with that, I guess I'll pause for any general comments, questions, or feedback, things that you like about this, don't like about it, features that you would like to see that we could ask our developers to work on adding. Or just any sort of general thoughts on the dashboard and how we can improve it.
I think some narrative would be helpful, so people that may be clicking on the map like you did and things change on the dashboard, they know why and how to get back out like you did. It's not intuitive, I don't think, at this point, but some guidance on that would be helpful.
Yes, I think some user instructions would have helped me certainly on how to get back to the start, and also explaining why things are changing. That's a good comment. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, is there any way to put contact information on the projects? As a small agency, sometimes it's nice to be able to contact somebody in relation to those projects to see how they did their grant application, if that's a possibility.
Yes, I don't think it would be difficult to include that. I guess we might want to make sure that the awardees understand that that's going to happen so that they're not surprised if people reach out to
Sure.
them. But I think that that's appropriate.
Thank you.
When
Actually,
they
I have a question
export,
on that one. Oh, sorry, Mark.
no, go ahead.
Actually, I have a question for you on that one, Dawn. If you were a small agency and your email address was listed kind of on this public dashboard, would that overwhelm you with people reaching out, or would that be okay? I think generally we try to avoid putting contact info for specific people on websites, on external facing websites. But I think we could probably figure out a way for you to get in contact with someone that's not email Dawn Block at, whatever.
I would be okay with that.
Okay.
As on the back side of this, I would want to see that. I don't know that that would be appropriate on the front side, but maybe just a contact name and then let them do the homework to try to, or contact somebody at CDOT to find that person, and then CDOT would be able to make that judgment.
Yeah, I was wondering if that would meet your need, is if we put something on here that says for specific project information, contact the Clean Transit Enterprise, and then the staff would match make and do that offline so that the whole
Yes.
World Wide Web isn't reaching out to you.
Absolutely.
With all the crazy things that happen with people's email addresses being posted publicly.
Absolutely. I think that'd be acceptable.
My question was on the export. What would they be exporting? Would it be user, like would they still be able to use it once they exported it, or is it only functioning while it's on this platform?
Oh, I should have explained. So the framing that you're seeing on my screen right now is the internal Power BI website at CDOT. So the user would only see what is in this box here, where it has the CDOT logo and downward. So if you're referring to this button for export, I believe that is for the actual module itself when we want to put it on the website. So yeah, if we move forward with posting this publicly, it would be restricted to just the white space that you're seeing basically from the logo on downward. Now, with that said, if we wanted to make it possible for a user to, say, download all of the data in the table, because I'll flip here. All of the data on this dashboard is basically tied to an internal CDOT shared document where we would record this. So as we make awards, we would update this Google Sheet, and it would then directly update the dashboard. So it would be possible to make the raw data that's feeding all of this downloadable by the public if we felt that was appropriate.
I don't have super strong feelings either way, but that would be a step towards transparency, just making that raw data available, like as an Excel file or something like that. And it may save you guys some Quora requests. I mean, it's all public information anyway. So if like a researcher had or a reporter had a desire to download that and write a story about the projects and how things are panning out, like I don't see the harm in that personally, but maybe other people have perspective on that. As a suggested enhancement, I guess.
I don't have any objection to that idea.
Well, happy to accept additional comments for discussion. If not, I think that we can commit that Between now and the next meeting, we will work with our team to make some of these changes and then post the initial version of this on the Clean Transit Enterprise webpage. We would, of course, remove all of the sample dummy data that we've included here for demonstration purposes. So in the beginning, it will only show the 4 awards in the planning category that have actually occurred. But over time, as there's a greater variety and number of awards, it should start to look more like what we're seeing here with the different categories and the more interesting ways of filtering the data.
Yeah, I just had one other question. So there's our dashboard here, and there's also a transit emissions dashboard on CDOT's website. I think was created a couple of years ago for the purpose of tracking greenhouse gas emissions from transit vehicles in the state. And I understand they have different purposes, so I'm wondering if you can provide an update on that dashboard and what we're looking at with that one versus what we're including in our dashboard.
Yes, Director Fromer, the transit emissions dashboard was sort of a concept that was shared on CDOT's webpage, as you say, a few years ago. And the intent there was not to share data about any specific grant funding source like this one is. Rather, it was to identify all of the transit vehicles in the state and try to document the value of that transit service on reducing emissions, both from electrifying vehicles, but also just in terms of the daily use of transit to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. And so that dashboard has not been maintained currently as a as a full and holistic version of the whole state. It was a proof of concept, and we've been looking to expand it in the future. But one of the reasons that we pressed pause on that was knowing that this Clean Transit Enterprise dashboard was going to be created. And I think that once we post this and start maintaining it, it would be worth returning to the question of, is there a way to integrate more data into this dashboard or another dashboard to show the full benefit of transit beyond just these funding sources? So right now, these are kind of 2 separate products. The transit emissions dashboard is not really live at the moment. It's not being maintained, but I think in the future we could think about ways to connect the two to have even more meaningful information for the public to understand how these things interact.
Okay, thanks for that.
All right, well, with that, I will stop sharing and let Desiree take back control here for the slides moving forward.
Good. And while Desiree's putting the slides up, I think we are just to our wrap up portion of the meeting. So we will be scheduling another meeting with the board in the May-June timeframe. It's our intention that we would bring the capital award recommendations to you at that point in time. So it may slip into June because the deadline for responses, I think, is going to be early May for the capital grant. So it might take a little while for us to get that information and get prepped for a board meeting, but expect that to be in the May-June timeframe. Again, at that meeting, we would have the capital award recommendations, and we would start planning for round 2 of the planning grants as well, because that will be coming up in the fall. And then, of course, anything else that the board is interested in hearing about. And with the additional potentially month turnaround between this meeting and the next meeting, I think we'll be looking closely at the feedback that board members gave in their interviews and seeing if we can get some small rural agencies to do some presentations. We might also reach out to NREL and the team that's doing the ZEV zero emission bus planning projects. So we've got some ideas floating around for that next meeting, but as always, if folks have suggestions, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to add them to the agenda. And then I think the other thing, I'll hand it back to you, Director Fromer, but if we did want to go around and do a roundtable, which was one of the suggestions, if anyone has anything to share, we could do that at this time before we close out.
All right. Are there any other questions or discussion? Not hearing anything. Thank you to CDOT staff. Thank you to the board members. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See you, everybody.